Hey everyone, so today we're going to talk about how Pro Tools deals with its file structure, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about some hardware setup in the Playback engine. So, first thing is I'm going to grab a demo session here, and we're going to just look. And you'll notice that we've got right now 2 folders and a couple of files. And when you launch that in Pro Tools, so we have our pinwheel and loading up. Okay, so Pro Tools loaded up. I'm going to go and minimize these windows. And then look at our same folder, and you'll notice that it's created a bunch of empty folders. So there's now an empty clip groups folder and an empty video files folder. So this is what Pro Tools is it's preparing for any of these folders that you might want to use as you're working through your session. So audio files is pretty much always going to be there. So that's our first one, and that's any audio that's going to be in your session. And then you have bounced files. That's where your mix downs will go, your bounces, at least by default. You don't have to put them there, but Pro Tools gives you a folder kind of automatically that allows you to put any of your mixes in there. Then there's a exported clip groups folder, which is currently also empty, but if you need to, you can always export clip groups there. Clip groups we'll talk about later. And then we have our Pro Tools session file, so the ptx.ptx file. So this is like a map of all the stuff that matters to your session. So it's a map to all the audio files. It points to those. It's a map to all your edits, to all your settings that are in that session, and it also contains all your MIDI data. So MIDI data is very small amounts of information, and you'll notice that this file, even with a few audio files and things, the actual session file is tiny. It's like 64 kilobytes, which is like a Word doc, basically. So it's really important when you're sharing a session that you don't just send the one session file, because all it is a map. So it's a map that your computer reads and goes, oh, I know where this audio is, and I know where these video files are, but it's just a map. It's just a pointer to that thing. So if you just send that, it's a map to stuff on your computer, but the person you send it to is not actually going to have access to those same files, because it's just an arrow to someone else's hard drive somewhere, right? So whenever you want to share, maybe you need somebody who's going to do some mixing, or maybe you're collaborating with someone else and you're sending a session back and forth, the best way to do it is to not copy this, but rather copy the entire folder, right? So maybe zip up the whole folder and send it to them with whatever, file sharing program you like, Drive or Dropbox or whatever. So you want to make sure that they have all the audio information they need, all the information that the session needs to function just like it does on your computer. That means sending the entire folder, not just this one file that's just a map. Now, the awesome thing about this setup is that, say this PTX file gets lost or damaged somehow, which happens here and there, right? Well, you never lose your audio files. They're all separate and organized in the audio files folder. They're individual WAV files, or AIFF, but typically we use WAV because they work everywhere, right? PC and Mac. So that's super, super great for safety, right? We don't want to lose all the stuff just because this tiny little file got corrupted on a save one time or something. So the really important thing about this is that it gives you this like backup where you can rebuild all the audio in your session. You didn't lose that killer guitar solo that maybe that guy or girl is ever going to do. Maybe they're going to do it once, and they did this amazing thing that blew everyone's mind, and your session got messed up and you think, oh no, that solo's gone. But it's not. It's actually sitting in the audio files, and you can rebuild a session that will have all that stuff. You haven't lost the important stuff. So this is actually a good system. The same deal for video files. If you have video files in your session, they'll be stored in their own separate folder that you can go in and access if necessary. Also, the longer your session is open for, you'll notice that Pro Tools starts generating these backup session files. So, and there went one. We just got a new one right there. So what it's doing is actually giving us a copy of this tiny file with whatever edits have happened, and it kind of auto saves those every certain amount of time. Looks like it's set to every 5 minutes or so. So every 5 minutes, it takes a little backup copy of your session file. So you can kind of go back in time, and these files aren't filling up your computer with information or anything. They're tiny, right? So you can have hundreds of these, and it's going to be practically no effect. So that's actually really useful too, because maybe you've done 10 minutes of editing, decide you hate everything that you did in that experiment, and then can go back in time 10 minutes really easily and restore from that session file backup. So another nice feature. And then video files we talked about. Finally, the wave cache. So this is a file that holds all the visual information that you're seeing when you're looking at audio files in Pro Tools. So when we're looking at these waveforms, you're actually just seeing information that's in the wave cache file. So we're seeing these audio waveforms, right? Those guys are all, the visual part of that is all stored in the wave cache file. And that one actually, if it gets damaged or removed on accident, Pro Tools will actually just rebuild it on load. So if it doesn't find one, it'll just rebuild a wave cache. And every once in a while, you will load a big file into a session. Maybe you're importing a big WAV file or something. And what'll happen is in Pro Tools, you'll just see like a blank square here. You won't see anything inside it. That's because Pro Tools is still building the visual part into the wave cache file while the import is happening. So often the audio will already be there and accessible. You can listen, but you won't see the waves for a couple of minutes because that wave cache file has to get built. Cool, so that's that for the file structure, right? So it keeps everything in nice, convenient little separated folders, and then a map to all those things in the PTX file. And if you're going to if you're going to send this to anyone else because you guys are collaborating on a project or something, the best way to do it is zip up the entire folder, never just send a PTX file because there's almost nothing in it. Unless all you did was MIDI, trust me, you want to send the whole folder. All right, so that's the file structure. And then let's have a quick look at one very important spot, one dialog box. So in the setup menu, and you can usually access this even before a session's open. It's one of the few things you can get to if nothing is open. So I'm going to close this and have Pro Tools on, and that keeps automatically redoing. Here we go. So where's Pro Tools? There's Pro Tools. So you can see Pro Tools is here, but no session is open, right? I don't have anything open. But if I go over to Setup and Playback Engine, I can actually get to that without having a session open. And sometimes Pro Tools will give you an error when it's trying to open, saying the playback engine is wrong or the sample rate is wrong. This is the place you go to try and fix that. So if you get a strange error just trying to open Pro Tools, often what's happened is when Pro Tools loads, it searches your computer for all the interfaces and things that are plugged in. And what it does is generate this list. So you can see my interface is the duet. And if it doesn't find an interface, and there's often a whole bunch of them, right? If it doesn't find an interface, it will try and just use the built-in audio in your computer, right? So your speaker and your microphone, just that's built in. That it often calls Pro Tools aggregate. So the input from your computer and the output of your computer put together. I/O is input, output. So usually it will try that if it doesn't find an audio interface. But sometimes it will pick something random. Like if I'm in class sometimes, it will pick up the projector, which can't do audio hardly at all, but it must have some sort of audio output that Pro Tools recognizes, and totally won't open Pro Tools. And it's all because of this playback engine. So it searches for all the things that are plugged into your computer and hopefully picks the right thing. But if it doesn't, sometimes you'll have troubles opening Pro Tools. So the first place to go whenever you're having an issue is Setup and then Playback Engine. And make sure the right interface is plugged in and chosen. Then a couple other settings here I just wanted to mention. So one is the hardware buffer size. So this is only the buffer in the memory of the computer for low latency actions like recording and input monitoring. So if you're about to record, this setting needs to be just right. And usually you want the lowest setting you can get. So lower settings mean that the audio from you going into the computer is going to go through the computer and then back out the interface and into your headphones, right? So we want the minimum amount of time for that round trip to happen. And if this is too high, you'll hear an echo in your headphones while you're trying to record, and you will get totally confused trying to line up with the actual recorded audio, right? So you'll be trying to play to a click or play to a drum thing that's already recorded, and it will cause all kinds of issues for you trying to sync up. So you want the lowest possible. Now the problem is if you go to the very bottom, like say 32 samples in my case, and this is different depending on what your system and your interface can handle. The lower you go, the less wiggle room the computer has for lag when it's trying to process things. So say you have like a big reverb or something or other effects on the recording track that you're trying to use, the computer will have less and less processing power for those things, less and less memory for those things. So what will happen is if it's too low, it will start crashing. It'll say the CPU ran out of memory or some other similar error. So if you're getting those kinds of errors where you're running out of memory, just raise the buffer size a little bit. And I would just go one click at a time, try record again, see how it goes. And typically, up to about 128, you don't notice any lag or echo in the headphones or anything. It's usually fine. So 32, 64, 128, all fine. 256, you start to feel like you're not lining up quite right, and you can sometimes hear an echo. And then after that, it's really bad. So for your buffer size, the lowest setting that you can get. Then there's a few other settings in here that we should just mention. Optimize performance at lower buffer sizes. So this just means Pro Tools is going to try and disable stuff that's not being used while you're recording when it's possible. So it allows for a little bit of extra wiggle room when you're in these lower sample rates while you're recording. So, not sample rates, sorry, buffer sizes. And so you typically want this on, right? It's just Pro Tools doing a little bit of smart algorithm stuff to help you conserve system resources. So have it on, why not, right? And then ignore errors during playback and record, that's fine, just have it on. Usually these clicks and pops are only out the headphones. They're not actually happening in the actual record portion of that. So I usually have this on. This is a new setting that we'll probably learn about later. Dynamic plugin processing is another thing that helps with all that processing power that's inside Pro Tools and your system. So typically these three are going to be checked. The one you typically want unchecked is the video engine. So you tend to get different problems sometimes, system system memory issues, different things go wrong when this is on. You basically only want the video engine on if there's actual video in your session. So the problem with this is if it's on in a session and then you go and you open a music only session, this will stay on. So once it's clicked on when you have some video, it will actually stay on. So if you're getting random errors, you can always go in and check here and go, oh, you know what, the video engine is giving me kind of weird things are happening. So just uncheck it. But again, once you've imported a video in on a previous session, the next session, the video engine will be enabled. So you probably want to turn that back off. And then we can worry about cache size at some other point. So that's it.